Hello Mayans and welcome back to my channel. Or if this is your first time watching, I'm Blvd Maia, and I talk about everything in my transgender, asexual, and lesbian life that you would really like to know about, but are afraid to ask. And boy does this week's topic fill that bill. I decided that this week I wanted to talk about sex, which is something I do quite often on this channel. And not just about sex for transgender people with cisgender people, but also some things that focus on the cisgender experience with transgender people. And I want to do this in a positive way, because Lord knows there's enough scary information out there. So you see somebody cute from across the club, and you walk up to them and you talk to them for a little while, and you realize you really enjoy their company. And maybe you go out a few times and then decide to have sex, or maybe you realize right away that she's down to fuck. And if one of you is transgender in that equation, that's when it gets a little tricky. Myself, I'm not an advocate for just, putting it out there right away that you're transgender. Nobody just gives out all their medical history on the very first meet. You don't think that relationship's gonna go anywhere? What's the point? I think this is where the negative stereotypes really hurt transgender people, because it's almost like we're somehow a new leper class. But the thing is, being transgender isn't something that's a negative. However, if you're going to have sex or be intimate really in any kind of way, that's where I myself will draw the line, and I will come out and say that I'm transgender. And I think that's a good idea, because being transgender is going to impact the sexual experience. Perhaps in very tiny, almost negligible ways, all the way up to, some pretty significant ways. Now, cisgender people, here's where I ask that you have a little bit of an open mind. If you were initially attracted to them, that really hasn't changed any. Your perception of the situation may have changed, but that really is down to, I think, a lot of the negative stereotypes we have around transgender people. I'm not saying that either one of you has to have sex, by the way, in this situation. And I think it's perfectly legitimate to have a genital preference, and it's perfectly okay to talk about how is this going to work. And what I'm talking about here is communication, and that's probably a very good idea whether you're cisgender or transgender. Now, to you transgender people out there, the only thing I'll add is, for the sake of safety, do not reveal that you're transgender to a cisgender person when you're alone with them, and certainly not when you're already in bed, because that's when things can get deadly. Okay, you've met, if you're trans, you've disclosed your status, and now it's time to set expectations. Don't be afraid to tell your partner what you like, what you don't like. Sex is meant to be enjoyable. It's supposed to be fun. And it's a lot more fun when you're both enjoying it equally. Talk about things like, I like to be penetrated. I don't like to be penetrated. I like it when you stroke my penis. I don't like it when you stroke my penis. I really like it when people touch the back of my knee or pull my hair, or any of a million different things. This is the time to talk about it before you're in the bedroom. And that's pretty general advice, but the wrinkle here for transgender people is that they can very often have very strict go, no-go zones, especially if they're pre-op. So for instance, let's say you're having sex with somebody who has a penis, who doesn't want that penis. I think there's this assumption that people who have penises want to use them during sex, and that is far from the case. And the same goes for people who own vaginas. They may not want to be penetrated. Now obviously cisgender people can have preferences for places they want to be touched or not touched as well, but for transgender people it can be very triggering. It can be part of their dysphoria, as is the language you might use in bed. There are a lot of transgender people who like to engage in what they call language switching, and I know this can be very challenging if you're cisgender and you don't have experience doing this. But some transgender women don't want you to call their penises a penis because it reminds them that they have one. So it could be, they want you to call it a clitoris. My friend Jay, who's a trans guy, says that he very often refers to his own genitalia as a peen. And if you're resistant to this kind of language switching because you think it's somehow lying or not telling the truth, let's get real here. A lot of cisgender partners want you to refer to their genitalia by all kinds of different pet names. And we just kind of shrug. We might think it's a little funny, we might think it's a little amusing, but we don't really think it's in some way beyond the norm. And if you've gotten that far, what's really the big deal? I think we very often get hung up on assumption, both cisgender and transgender people. And so often it is based on a little bit of information and a whole lot of stereotypes. I think for transgender people, we very often assume that a cisgender person is just not going to want to have sex with us. We go up to, hit on them, they're going to think we're creepy. We have bought our own bad press. However, it is just the fact that there are many more cisgender people out there in the world than there are transgender people. The odds are pretty great that your possible sex partner is going to be a cisgender person. And do yourselves both a favor and don't just walk in thinking that cisgender person is going to be terrible. And if you're a cisgender person, when that person tells you you're transgender, don't assume anything either. I've often noted that when I tell a cisgender person that I'm transgender, they very often automatically assume that means penis. That's all they can think about. But some of us have vaginas too, and believe me, it's pretty awesome. And yeah, there are a lot of pre-op trans women. There are a lot of trans women who are happy to just stick with the penis. Stick. don't automatically assume that that means that that person is going to be somehow aggressive. Do not automatically overlay masculine assumptions on them. It is so difficult for cisgender people to get past the idea of penis equals man. But I could give you references for people who could tell you that even before I went through my transition, I was never a typical male partner in bed, ever. My next sex tip has to do with toys. And who doesn't love toys? Nobody I want to have sex with, that's who. But if you're cisgender, what you may not realize is that toys can be not just a fun thing to have when you're transgender. I know transgender people who literally cannot function sexually without sex toys because it fills in the gaps. And yeah, that's a trans guy joke. Because if you don't have a penis and you really want one, you know, you might go to one of these. And of course, a vibrator like this could be used to penetrate places where maybe you don't want to put your fingers, but you're going to get a lot of enjoyment, and there's nothing wrong with that. It might surprise you to know, and yeah, I know I'm holding this, that trans women who are pre-op will very often still choose to use a strap-on because it more closely replicates the kind of sexual experience they want to have, especially if they're having sex with another lesbian. They very often may not want to use their own penis in that situation because it not only makes them uncomfortable, we also don't want to make our partners uncomfortable. What kind of sexual experience is that? Not a very fun one, that's what it is. Even me as a vagina-having post-op transgender lesbian, if my lesbian partner wanted me to use a strap-on on her, yeah, I would totally do that. And of course, if you're a transgender man and you're gay, just because you weren't born with a penis doesn't mean you can't buy one and satisfy a cisgender gay man who likes penetration. Sex is open to all kinds of possibilities, and there's no reason why we shouldn't explore every single one, as long as it is something that we consent to do and that we enjoy. And since I brought up gay, some advice I want to give my transgender friends out there is that don't assume that just because your cisgender partner is of the same sex as the kind of partners you're used to getting intimate with before your transition, that you're going to have the same kind of experience. Let me give some examples. If you're used to having sex with straight women, you may very well find that the experience of having sex with a lesbian woman is significantly different. This is something I know firsthand, and it took me a while to learn this. I mean, just building up finger stamina alone was took me a while. I mean, your arm can get tired, believe me. I don't think people understand that as intuitively as they do that sex with a straight man is very much different than sex with a gay man. And if you are cisgender and gay, and this is the first time your transgender partner has been with somebody who is gay, you may have to hold them by the hand a little bit. And of course, if you're a gay trans man and you're having sex with a cisgender gay man for the first time, you might find that there are a lot fewer taboos all of a sudden to your sex life than there was before. I won't get into a lot of what that means because frankly, I don't know a lot about that. But I have heard from friends that things like preparing before you're gonna have anal sex can be an important thing. And a blanket statement I'll make, and I'm probably gonna get myself in trouble because blanket statements are never a good idea. If you're having sex with a gay person, a queer person of any stripe or variety, traditional gender roles are just gonna get thrown out the window. They're very likely not going to follow the same script that you're used to in your straight life. And if you're a cisgender gay person and you're having sex with a transgender person who is recently post-op, your transgender partner has basically become a virgin all over again. And the sexual experience is going to be new and a little bit scary. And they may not know what it is that feels good. So do not become discouraged if you can't bring them to orgasm. It takes a very long time before we can figure that out for ourselves. But all in all, as long as you approach it with a sense of exploration and a sense of inquisitiveness, this does not have to be scary. Really, the differences between transgender and cisgender people when we're having sex is just a little bit of extra consideration and sometimes patience. You might be missing out on the love of your life just because you don't want to take a little extra time. So I'm going to end the video right there. I know I only covered a fraction of what's possible in terms of sex tips. I just have to cover them in future videos. If you have any sex tips that you would like to share, please put them in the comments below. And I want to hear from all of you, whatever your gender identity is and whatever your sexual orientation is. As always, my social media is down below. And if you do have a dime to spare, and I know times are tough right now, please consider supporting what I do by subscribing to my Patreon. And on that note, please like this video by giving it a thumbs up, please share this video, and please subscribe, and see you around the interwebs.